Hey, what's going on, gang? This is Nate on the Stone. Welcome back to my channel. And this week we are talking about the disturbing trend of society not wanting to protect the norm anymore. A lot of attention was concentrated this past week in Northwest Illinois when the Palatine High School decided that girls are just going to have to share the bathroom, their locker rooms, and their showers with biological boys if those biological boys actually decide that they're really girls. And while all that was going on, Chick-fil-A made headlines by saying that it would no longer donate to the Salvation Army because of the bogus claim that the SA is both transphobic and homophobic. At the same time as those stories were playing out, an addendum of sorts was actually taking place in Austin, Texas, home of the International Drag Festival. Because of course we would live in a world today where the International Drag Festival is an actual thing. The festival was created back in 2014 by a man, I think, named Jamie Stewart Bancroft, who created the festival because, as he put it, quote, "They, drag artists, raise millions of dollars for charity. They expand our view of art through amazing creative performances. They also create conversation about gender roles in society. They are activists. They are leaders. The world would be a pretty boring place without our queens and kings." One of the drag performers who attended the festival was a guy by the name of Erika Klash from San Francisco, someone who has actually attended the festival every year since 2014. On Saturday, November the 16th, the weekend that the whole festival was going on in town, Klash decided that he needed to get a bite of lunch, and so he went to one of Austin's Whataburgers. But he was very surprised to find out that the manager of this particular Whataburger actually denied him entry, and security actually forbade him from entering the store because they labeled him a quote-unquote security threat. In a post on Instagram, Klash raised the predictable possibility that this was all done because of discrimination. Yes, you guessed it, saying, quote, "When one is in full drag and there are strangers staring at you while you're being physically blocked from entering an establishment and the person blocking your entry does not give a clear reason for doing so, it's hard for one not to wonder why all of this is happening. As a queer person, it's also hard to feel safe in those moments," unquote. Klash went on and said why it was so important to actually call out Whataburger, saying, quote, "We need to continue to hold them accountable. It has not deterred me from the goal to stand up for myself, the drag community, and other queer people." Now, before I go any further, it should be noted that Klash, when he tried to go into this particular Whataburger, was actually in full drag regalia, and Whataburger has a policy against allowing people into their stores who are wearing masks. Now, it's true that Klash wasn't actually wearing a mask, but he was wearing very heavy makeup, and it's very conceivable to see how his heavy makeup could have been filed under that same rule about no masks. But of course, that didn't matter, and the Twitterverse took to battle stations to decry this new example of injustice. Even though Klash still got his Whataburger, just going to another location and going through the drive-thru. On Twitter, Suzanne Egan said, quote, "I am so sorry that happened. Absolutely disgusting behavior against such a kind and generous person. We're all behind you, Erika Klash." Dawn H said, quote, "Not cool. Austin should be better than this. And Whataburger should be expecting professionals in all sorts of dress, drag or otherwise. If you've got a shirt and shoes on, you should get service. So much for keeping it weird here in A-Town. So sorry this happened to you." Trans Daddy said, quote, "Wow, Whataburger, what the hell? You done messed up now. Erika is a nationally known artist with a very large platform." So, was that a threat or just a fact? And Julia Chu posted a video of water pistols on Twitter with the simple caption, "Coming to rob them," which in my mind actually should have been investigated by the police, because I mean, when you have school kids, some as young as 10 years old, being punished for simply making a finger gun, water pistols definitely could be seen as an active threat against an establishment. Whataburger predictably apologized, saying on Twitter, quote, "We apologize you had a bad experience at Whataburger. We love all our customers, and we are investigating the circumstances surrounding this unfortunate incident. Please DM us your info. We would really appreciate an opportunity to speak directly to you so we can address this." Now, as of this recording, the investigation has already been concluded, but the details as to what was decided during that investigation and the steps that Whataburger is going to take after this investigation are still kind of sparse. Klash said on social media, quote, "Whataburger incorrectly and irresponsibly applied this company policy about masks to my situation." He went on to say that Whataburger had decided to adjust the placement of certain staff members, whatever that means, as well as implement new training to actually teach employees about security risks. It is not surprising in the slightest that Whataburger decided to apologize. Every outlet that carried this story jumped on Klash's implication that this whole thing was because of discrimination and bigotry, blaring in their headlines that Klash had been denied service because he was either a drag queen or because he was in drag regalia. And his aforementioned very large platform, as well as just the culture that we live in today, would have formed a metaphorical mob that I honestly hope would have stayed metaphorical and descended upon Whataburger if they hadn't apologized. The thing is, though, this story really illustrates the trajectory that society is on because, in all honesty, Erika Klash should have been denied entrance into that Whataburger on that Saturday because he was dressed in drag. Just in this specific case, Klash is known throughout the drag world for creating creations that are based on anime, but which also incorporate horror elements into them. The Daily Mail actually described them as grotesque, and yeah, after seeing some of his makeup jobs, some of the costumes that he's created for his drag persona, the Daily Mail is 100% correct. Again, this was a Saturday afternoon at a popular fast food restaurant. There were families there, and if I had to guess, there were young children with at least some of those families. Families, and especially families with small children, do not need to see something that looks like this. And this is where we get into the real meat and potatoes on this issue, because with this decision from Whataburger, the message that is being sent is that society is no longer interested in protecting and defending the norm. Instead, it is interested in promoting and defending everything that breaks the norm. Now, there are several things that a good society is supposed to have and to possess and promote. The very first thing that society is supposed to have and promote is actually order, because without order, society can't even exist in the first place. If there's no order of any sort or nature, then all you have is anarchy, and you can't have society where you have chaos. Now, if order is the first thing necessary for society to actually exist in the first place, then the first and end goal of that society, once it's been created, is justice, as Alexander Hamilton said, because when you have so many people living in close proximity to each other, toes are going to get stepped on, crimes are going to be committed. It's just part and parcel of human nature. As such, society has to be able to keep the peace by giving each citizen in that society what is due to him. But here's the thing, by themselves, order and justice are insufficient for a good society. Order, just left by itself, can quickly and very easily become authoritarian. Justice, left on its own, can very swiftly morph into something that is cold and unforgiving. Think of evil Mr. Spock. Neither one on its own is good enough for society, which is why a good society is actually going to aim not just for order, not just for justice, but for the common good. Today, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what is meant by the common good. Some people seem to think of it as code for some USSR-style authoritarian regime, where the greater good of the state is put first and foremost above the good of any single one person who actually makes up society. But if we think about it, this can't be the real definition of the common good, because nothing good happens to the people whom society and or the state decides have to be sacrificed because they stand in the way of the greater good of itself. And since time and circumstances are constantly changing, even when it doesn't seem like they are, whoever or whatever group is on the outs with society can also constantly change, which means, in theory, no one is safe. On the other hand, other people seem to think that the common good is just the added private interests and desires of everyone who makes up a particular society. But that can't be the case, because if it were, all you'd have would be pandemonium. Not every single person in society is going to want specifically the same thing at the exact same time, meaning that if all of their desires, all of their wants are equally valid, even when they contradict each other, the state is going to be in the enviable position of trying to square the circle and say all of them are equally good and should be equally fulfilled. One of the best modern definitions of the common good actually came in 1947 from the French philosopher Jacques Maritain. Maritain understood that the common good couldn't just be for society or the state, because the state is not an amorphous blob. The state and society is actually made up of concrete individual persons. But at the same time, the common good couldn't just be the conglomeration of different desires and wants, because if that's the case, society would crumble trying to satisfy everyone's different tastes. The real common good, then, Maritain understood, was what benefited both the individual people that made up society and society together as a whole. It's the multitude of people living together in the good human life. I get it. That very easily sounds like a bunch of highbrow philosophical jargon, but it does make sense. Maritain argued that because of our shared universal human nature, there are going to be things that are good for us simply by the fact of us being human persons, regardless of race, sex, creed, socioeconomic status, etc. Think of it honestly like a garden. Now, a garden is going to have a ton of variety in regards to plants and flowers, and all of them are going to require different specific things in order to fully thrive. Some plants are going to need more water than others. Some are going to need more heat and more light than others. But there are three things that they are all going to need, regardless of what they are and regardless of the specific conditions that they need to fully thrive. They're going to need rich, nutritious soil, they're going to need water, and they're going to need sunlight. With those three basic elements, not only will the individual plants thrive, but because the individual plants are thriving, the entire garden as a whole is going to thrive and be successful. Now, based on that definition, we might start thinking, okay, we kind of have an idea now of what things would go into this common good society. For example, it would have public services and utilities like roads and schools. It would have a strong financial system and a strong military. It would have a good legal system that could administer justice. It would have good laws, customs, institutions, and symbols to unite people together. But Maritain would say that that's not quite enough. The common good would definitely cover these elements, but it would also go beyond that. For Maritain, the common good would have these things, but would also be the sum or integration of, for example, the sense of right and liberty, religious richness, virtue, happiness and heroism, and friendship and justice that we all have individually within ourselves. And it would include these elements as well, because Maritain would say that because we are human persons who have come together into a society for the sole purpose of actually being able to have communion with other human persons, we would actually distill these elements from our own lives into society as a whole. Think of it honestly as a ripple effect in a pond. Whatever you have within yourself, you will put into society. And those things, good or bad, are going to be distilled across the society as a whole. Maritain finally said that the genuine common good has to be both just and morally good. But that still leaves us with a glaring problem. Okay, so the common good has to be just and morally good. Great, got it, fine, whatever. But what exactly qualifies as being just and morally good? In other words, what things are good for every single person in the whole wide world just based on the fact that they are a human person? Okay, this answer is going to get kind of technical and philosophical. My apologies in advance, but it's important that we see this through to the end. Are you ready, gang? Here we go. The answer is whatever naturally allows us to fulfill the ends of our nature. Let's take an example. People are bipeds, meaning that they're supposed to be born with 2 legs and 2 arms. 2 legs because that is how we're actually supposed to be mobile, something that we're supposed to do. Our 2 legs give us our mobility through walking, etc. And 2 arms because we're also supposed to, as bipeds, have the ability to manipulate things with our hands. But some people are just born without any arms or any legs whatsoever. It's called tetraamelia syndrome. Now, I don't think that any one of us would actually just look at a person. Now, I don't think that any of us would just look at a person with tetraamelia syndrome and say, well, tough luck, but that's the way that you were supposed to be born because it's natural, because you were born that way. No, we would look at that poor person and say that they were, in a real sense, born broken, because without any arms or limbs, they're not able to fully reach the potential of their nature, which is, again, to be able to be mobile and to be able to manipulate things because of the fact that man is supposed to be a bipedal animal. Or let's take another example. Because of our rationality and our ability to communicate, whether that's through speaking or writing, the purpose of our communication, the purpose of being able to actually express ourselves is to find and then to share the truth with other people, because the whole point of being a rational animal is to be able to discover and then to hold on to the truth. And because we intrinsically know this, at least on some level, people who we know are liars are not only despised by the rest of us, but they are also not trusted. This is why we have all these jokes about used car salesmen and lawyers. Now, I'll be honest here with you, gang. There's no way that we could actually form right here, right now, a comprehensive list of all the natural ends that we are supposed to achieve as people, simply because that list would be really, really long, and this video is already running a little long as it is. But some of the things that are good for us, simply because we are people, and which we are supposed to strive towards, include truth, justice, beauty, knowledge, faith, liberty, and family. And I'll bet you noticed what was missing from that admittedly very short list. Drag. And this is because, to put it quite simply, never mind what Jamie Stewart Bancroft says, drag is not part of the common good. And don't just take my word for it. Listen to what RuPaul, the most famous drag performer in our time today, had to say about drag in the 2020 January Vanity Fair issue. He said, quote, "True drag really will never be mainstream, because true drag has to do with seeing that this world is an illusion, and that everything that you say you are, and everything it says that you are on your driver's license, it's all an illusion. Most people will never in their lives understand what that is, because they don't have the operating system to understand that duality." In other words, drag, by its very nature, not only gets rid of the idea of man and woman as separate biological and metaphysical entities, and because of that, it gets rid of the sexual complementarity of men and women, which is actually what's required to make a family, but more than that, it also denies objective reality and objective truth. And dismissing objective truth as just an illusion, not only is that intrinsically wrong in and of itself, but if that is your philosophy, and if that is the philosophy of your profession and your movement, then you cannot have order, you cannot have justice, and you can't have freedom, since those 3 things, among as many other things, require objective truth. They can't survive if there is absolutely no distinction between truth and lies. And this is why Whataburger should not have apologized. They should not have kowtowed again to the mob that was forming outside of their doors, metaphorically speaking. If Erika Klash was so desperate to have some Whataburger for lunch, gesundheit Heg, he could have done what he ended up doing, going through a drive-thru and getting his food there, especially when he was dressed in drag. Again, looking something like this. Because whether he intended to or not, going out in society, in drag, was actually proclaiming the heart and core of drag as RuPaul described it. Again, whether Erika Klash was aware of that or not, whether he meant to or not, the very nature of drag meant that that was the message that he was sending out. And because the message of drag, not drag queens individually again, but of drag itself, is so antithetical to the common good and to society, Whataburger had every justification of saying, no, sorry, you can't physically come in dressed like that. If you actually want to have food, we can serve you through the drive-thru. In a common sense, sane world, Erika Klash would have been able to look at himself in the mirror and come to that conclusion on his own. The fact that he immediately assumed that it was discrimination, and the fact that so many people immediately took his side, and the fact that Whataburger immediately laid down and played possum, shows that the priorities of society are no longer with the common good. Or, to put it more accurately, they are still with the common good. You really can't have a society without some idea of the common good, but the idea of the common good is being manipulated and it is being changed so that instead of promoting and defending the things that actually complete us, society is now gearing towards promoting and defending the things that can't satisfy us, that can't feed us, and that will end up destroying us. If not those things in particular, then the underlying philosophy behind them certainly will. But as always, what say you? Was this an actual attack against the common good? Again, whether Erika Klash realized it or not, or is this just a molehill that I've made a mountain out of? As always, let me know your thoughts, your ideas, and your opinions down in the comment section below. Well, that about wraps up everything for right now, gang. As always, if you liked the video, whether you agreed with me or not, don't forget to show your support by giving the video a like, sharing it on social media, leaving a comment, and if you really like videos about the culture, politics, and religion but from a different POV, then don't forget to subscribe and to ring the bell for notifications so that you will always know when I put up new videos like this every Tuesday. Once again, thank you for watching. Thank you for giving me a little bit of your day. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. And I will see you all again next week, gang, right here on top of the stone. Ciao.